A brand new Terraria player file should be around 3.5 kilobytes in size. Less than a third the size of a blank Word document, player data in Terraria is essentially negligible in size. After all, there just isn't that much unique player information that has to be stored in the file, and what information does need to be stored doesn't take up much space. Most player files should be roughly the same size as a new one, that is, around 3 to 5 kilobytes. However, there's still a variance. As you see, some files are simply larger than others. Some players just take more space than others to store. That begs the question then, how large can a player file get? There should be a combination of settings or flags or whatever in a player that makes the largest possible save. Furthermore, how large would the biggest save file be? 50 kilobytes? 100? Maybe a megabyte? Well, let's see. How big do you think it'll be? The size of a player file actually depends on just a few factors, since most of the file is actually made of pre-allocated static blocks. For example, buff data is always stored in this block of 352 bytes, right here. 8 bytes per buff, 4 for the buff ID, 4 for duration, times 44 total buff slots. Even if you have no buffs, the game will still store the buff data for all 44 buff slots, even if it's 352 0 bytes in a row. Most of the file is made of allocated data blocks like this, used to store all sorts of things. Since our goal is making the largest player file, we can safely ignore these static blocks, since they're always going to be the same size. Instead, we can focus on maximizing the size of the data that is variable in size. If we maximize the size of the variable size information and we know the rest of the player file is of constant size, then we'll know we have made the largest possible player file. So what are the variable data we need to look at and maximize? Well, there are 4: player name, research, spawn points, and mouse items. Player name is our first and most obvious variable length data point. After all, different players have names of different lengths. To maximize the space used to add a player name, we just have to make it as long as possible. When typing the name in Terraria, player names can be up to 20 characters long. Yes, I know they can be longer when externally edited, but I'll be sticking to the longest possible in-game. While this may be the longest name, we can still use more space by maximizing the space used per character. We can accomplish this by using Unicode characters, namely Chinese Hanzi, as they are actually supported by Terraria. In the UTF-8 encoding format that Terraria uses, Chinese characters take 3 bytes per character versus just 1 for Latin text, meaning that our 20 character name now takes up 60 bytes instead of just 20. That's maximization of the player name data right there. Now that we have a player with 20 Chinese characters as its name, we can now consider research. Research data is stored near the end of the player file and is basically a list of every researched item's name followed by the quantity researched for that item. What's interesting is that the item names are stored as text, not IDs like everywhere else in the file. This means storing research in the player file is supremely inefficient. A fully researched character with all 5,389 researchable items uses 99,222 bytes to store its research data. That's 18.41 bytes per item, which is over twice as inefficient as just storing data using int item IDs like the rest of the file. Honestly, I have no clue why they decided to do this. Either way, I'm not complaining. After all, we kinda want inefficiency right now. As by far the largest section of the player file, adding research to a journey mode character balloons our character's file size by a factor of 28, to approximately 103 kilobytes. Next is spawn points. Interestingly, your spawn points in each world are not actually stored in the world file, but instead are on the player file. Spawn points are stored right before the research data and consist of the spawn point's coordinates, the world's world ID, and the world name. Like the rest of these, there is no pre-allocated block for spawn points. Instead, the game reads as many spawn points as it can before it hits a block of 4 FF bytes, which basically tells it to stop, as there are no spawn points anymore. Theoretically, this means a player file should be able to store an infinite number of spawn points, but there's actually a hard arbitrary limit of 200 spawn points per player since the array is only 200 long. Sad. Either way, we have 200 spawn points to fill up. As these spawn points store the world name as a string, we'll set world names in each to the max of 27 Chinese characters to maximize the space taken by each entry, similar to the player name. Add 200 of these uber Chinese spawn points, and bam, we have a max spawn point character. At this point, our character is around 121 kilobytes in size. This is very close to our maximum size, but we can pick out a few more bytes using this, the mouse item. You know how you can pick up items with your mouse and kinda keep them there? Well, they're actually stored there as well. The cursor is the unofficial 59th slot of the inventory and gets some storage space of its own. If you log out with anything on your mouse, in the Goblin Tinker, research menu, or guide menu, that item is actually not deleted. Instead, it is logged inside the player file itself so that it may be retrieved when you log back in. This is not pre-allocated space, and thus, if you log out with anything in your mouse, your player file will have some bytes more than normal. So to finally max out our player file size, we log in, open the Goblin Tinker, put an item inside, hold something on the mouse, and log out. This is logged to our file right here, and opening it reveals our file's true final size, 121,792 bytes. It's still not a significant size, being the size of a very crappy JPEG, but hey, it did it well. Hello, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, as only roughly a quarter of you are. Similar videos are on the left and right. Either way though, thank you for watching, and good day, and goodbye. See you next week.